it sounds like this boss, has a more old school mentality for what should be posted on LinkedIn. And yeah, of course, there's a time and place to post great things and exciting announcements about the company. But really, you want to, again, be helpful to people.
This is The Anonymous Marketer, a podcast where we tackle the biggest questions from the B2B marketing community. But instead of bringing on guests for a quick chat, every question comes from an anonymous source. These are the questions B2B marketers have, but are afraid to ask. Let's start the conversation.
Hello there. Welcome to The Anonymous Marketer. I am your host, Kirsty Lang, and joining me today is Lorraine Lee. We are going to be talking about how to deal with a boss who is a bit behind the times in terms of building a presence on social media and pushing back on your professional brand building. So yeah, Lorraine, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I feel a bit fangirly, so I'm just going to get into your little intro. I know you're going to put me to shame as a host today because Lorraine is a keynote speaker and virtual trainer, a LinkedIn Learning and Stanford Continuing Education course instructor, and many, many other things. Lorraine, do I have all that right? Is there anything else we need to add to your professional bio?
Those are the main things. You got it.
Okay, amazing. Well, most notably, I think for this conversation is that Lorraine also posts on LinkedIn Monday to Friday, and so successful is her content that she has over 300,000 people following her on LinkedIn, which is, it's too much for me to comprehend. I am just like on the cusp of 2,000 and I'm like, well, this is amazing. I've made it. Yeah, 300,000. Is that like terrifying a little bit? The responsibility of talking to that many people.
You know, it's funny. I didn't even think much about follower count until after I left LinkedIn and people started commenting on it, which is, I don't know, maybe a little bit silly of me. And then only when people started commenting did I think, oh, this is actually, a big deal. And I am reaching a lot of people. But, thankfully, I'm not too intimidated by it. I'm just of the mantra to offer, helpful, informative, educational content. And then, hopefully, people are enjoying it. And that's what's meaningful to me, to provide value to others.
Yeah, I love your content. It's one of the highlights of my feed. It's one of those, okay, I see Lorraine, I'm going to stop and I'm going to read and look at the cool picture. And I love that.
I can say the same with you now. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm working very hard. It's a slog, I think sometimes. It's difficult to kind of make the time and you're doing your job and, you've got side hustles and podcasts and, speaking events and all of these things. And then, you got to kind of post about it. But yeah, I have so much admiration for people that, like you, who are able to just build a following and maintain it as well. I think that's a piece of the puzzle that a lot of people miss. LinkedIn for me, just to your point about not kind of realizing follower count, I think the LinkedIn follower creator space snuck up on me. I feel that way maybe because I pivoted to like B2B and marketing a little bit later. So maybe like 3 years ago. So it was just probably when LinkedIn was gaining momentum. But yeah, it's an incredible space now. And I think if you told me that LinkedIn would be my favorite social platform like 2 years ago, I would have been like, what? Is it even a social platform?
Yeah. I mean, I think even still a lot of people think of LinkedIn as a job site. And, I have a keynote and various trainings on LinkedIn and I'll come into companies and talk about LinkedIn and people are like, wow, I didn't realize I could use it for all these things. And now I'm going to update my LinkedIn and not just to find a job, but to kind of just better showcase who I am as a professional. So yeah, you can do a lot on the platform now.
I love thinking about it as kind of a living portfolio. I think it's such a great way to just, share who you are, what you do, your successes. But a couple of months back, I feel like people were treating LinkedIn like Facebook. And it was almost like, here are pictures of my children, here, and it was a weird time, but I feel like we fully moved into like, of course, you were way ahead of the curve on this, but like fully moved into like the professional creator space. Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of building a personal brand on the platform and it gets me very excited, which is why I was so excited to pick up this question that we got in our amazing Anonymous Marketer spreadsheet, which comes from the Anonymous Marketer form, which if you have a question, anyone listening, a burning question that you want an expert like Lorraine to come in and tackle, please go to marketersindemand.com/anonymous, submit your question, tell me a little bit about you. It's like just company size and size of your marketing team, and kind of the industry that you're in. So we're not going to ask your name, job title, anything like that. So you can be completely anonymous. Yeah, I think that's the kind of the unique thing about the show is you don't have to be afraid of like asking for help. And then you
Yeah,
have
that's
someone
great.
awesome like Lorraine give it to you. So our anonymous marketer today is clearly frustrated, and I don't blame them. They sent through a rather lengthy question about the problem that they're currently facing. So I hope they don't mind, but I'm going to paraphrase a wee bit just for time. So, difficult situation for the podcast. Boss isn't thrilled with some things I post on LinkedIn. Anything that is pushing back against the status quo of CEOs or the workplace in general, I hear about it. I never call out my company, and the situations don't even apply to us. For example, big tech layoffs. So I think the poster is talking about big tech layoffs, and that has never happened to them. But I still hear about it. The go-to reason is because that's not our culture, or sending the wrong message to other employees who see it. But I can't get any specifics beyond that. I love my role and I'm excited about the company. It seems like the boss is just a bit of a control freak. And my gut reaction is that he's uncomfortable with any message that doesn't come from him or through official channels. The guy probably doesn't understand personal branding or having a non-corporate voice, talking about anything that isn't, look how great my company is, or resharing company posts. So yeah, this is fascinating to me because I feel like this was where we were, I don't know, back when I first started my career, and you had to kind of go and audit your social posts. I remember going back through all of my tweets from when I was like 17 and being like, oh my goodness, is there anything here that's going to embarrass me? Yeah, no, it's fascinating. It seems like our anonymous marketer's boss is still kind of in this space. But yeah, Lorraine, before we get into this, I want to just kind of zoom out a bit and hear more about your personal branding, social media journey, just to get some context. When did you kind of start building your platform?
I would say while I was working at LinkedIn. So I actually worked at LinkedIn for 6 years, and I always really loved the platform. Like even when I was in university, I had a very full profile. I was obsessed with it, with the platform. And then I got a job there and I started posting. I was on the editorial team. So our team was in charge of creating a lot of the content that you see on the platform. So anytime I would do a video interview, for example, or I would write an article, I would obviously push it or post it on LinkedIn and get it promoted. And so that was kind of, how I started. And then after leaving LinkedIn, that was an interesting transition because I was so used to posting on LinkedIn on behalf of LinkedIn as a LinkedIn employee. And my identity was very tied up in that. After I left LinkedIn, I went to another company called Prezi, and I just didn't post for a while. I was just taking a break. I didn't, maybe I was just getting used to my new job and didn't really know exactly what I should post yet. Is it on behalf of the new company? Is it all about work I'm doing? Over time, I started posting, yes, on behalf of the new company I was working at, but I also was doing things like speaking, the LinkedIn learning courses, for example. And so I started posting more about myself and the work that I was doing. And that's kind of what started really, I would say, amplifying my voice and my personal brand on the platform.
And so when you I understand kind of being completely immersed in the LinkedIn universe and kind of, I'm on LinkedIn sharing the work that I'm doing in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I am a huge fan of the LinkedIn editorial team, by the way. I think that is...
Yeah, they're amazing.
They're so good. And it's super unique, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but for a social platform to kind of create their own content in that way, I think it's fantastic. And I love everything that they do. So I've always been a huge fan. But yeah, so that kind of transition to, when did you kind of realize, okay, me posting is me building my personal professional brand, or has that always kind of been a part of what you were doing on there?
I don't think I fully realized the extent while I was working at LinkedIn. Again, I was just like, oh, I'm just doing my job, right? Like I post and I work at LinkedIn. So, that's just my day to day. I think probably when I started doing more public speaking and posting, and then that's when people started reaching out more and asking me to do other speaking events or inviting me to be on podcasts. And that's when I realized, oh, the content I'm putting out there and the visibility I'm giving myself is leading to other opportunities, and it's allowing people to know who I am. And so that's when it really clicked for me.
Yeah, I love that. And it's almost, I think a lot of people are kind of scared to take that leap. I think they realize the power that it can have. But some feedback that as I've been creating content about LinkedIn for BAFA, where I work as a content writer, I think the kind of feeling is like, oh, it's a bit cringy, to be putting myself out there like that. And, you kind of, I mean, this is something, a trap that I fall into now, is I kind of think like, oh, what would my friends from high school think about me doing this stuff now? Or, you kind of put that lens on, and it's really weird, because it's like 5 people who you would be like a little bit embarrassed by if I don't know. It's such an interesting mindset shift to kind of take that leap. How would you, I mean, for someone who feels like that is just a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of getting active on a platform like LinkedIn and building a personal brand, what advice would you give?
Yeah. And I think that feeling is very normal. And a lot of people feel like either they think it's cringy or they're just very nervous to put their voice out there. One of the good things about LinkedIn is it's tied to your name and your professional identity. On the flip side, that also is what freaks people out. So what I would say is really think about providing value to the people who are following you. So not so much, oh, I'm so excited to announce this, or I got this award, but just really, how can you help people and be of service to the people on the platform? And, it's similar to networking, right? Like when you're always helping other people, good things will come to you later. And so I think just having that mentality and wanting to help others, it can really help you get past that hurdle, feeling like, oh, I don't feel comfortable putting myself out there, or, oh, I don't feel comfortable talking about myself. If you switch that and talk about learnings you have or experiences that others can learn from, that's when it's, I think, a little bit easier to kind of put your voice out there.
Yeah. And I think if you kind of approach it from, as you say, from a position of learning, like there's, I love LinkedIn creators who kind of will share their mistakes and misconceptions that they had and how those things changed, or like stupid things that they've done at work. I mean, gosh, I have boatloads of things that I could be sharing about that on LinkedIn. And I think that's a cool way to approach it, and that it's not like the content then comes across as not like, oh, I'm talking about how amazing I am. It's, I am just sharing some cool stuff and you can learn from it with me.
Yeah. And we all have something to share, whether you just started off working or you've been working for 20 plus years. I think that's also something to remember. I think younger people, I just spoke at my alma mater, Northwestern, the other week. And I think people get nervous sometimes, like, oh, I'm not an expert in anything, or like, what can I speak on? But everyone has experiences. Maybe as a younger person, you might talk about resume mistakes or things you learned in the interviewing process, or how you decide to approach strangers on the platform as a younger, student. So there's a lot of things you can talk about. Yeah.
So the next thing I wanted to ask, I mean, maybe this is not super applicable to you, because obviously everyone at Prezi knew that you had come from this LinkedIn background. But when you kind of started getting active there again, what was the response like from your colleagues and your managers? Was there pushback, or was it just like, oh, this is Lorraine doing the thing that she has always done?
Yeah, there was no pushback at all. I think people were pretty supportive, and I think it really helped elevate my reputation at the company, because people would see me post on LinkedIn, and I don't think there was anyone else at the company who was particularly at least no one that I saw, but particularly active on the platform. So people see me posting, and like we said before, it can be kind of a scary thing. So to see someone doing that and pushing themselves, I think people were really impressed. And obviously I would talk about Prezi related things on occasion, so that's good. Brand awareness for the company. And so I think people were generally, very supportive and happy to see me out there.
Yeah, I want to circle back to what you've said about brand awareness, but I think that's a later piece in the puzzle. So putting a pin in that for now. You have seen, you've touched on it a little bit, you've seen amazing benefits from, getting active again on LinkedIn, even though you weren't working there. Can you tell us a little bit about, the things that changed for you? I know we've spoken kind of offline about how, you were tapped for presentations and company all hands. What happened?
Yeah. So I think when I started posting on LinkedIn, I think it was a really good way for me to stay top of mind for people. So people who maybe hadn't heard from me in a while start seeing me posting, and they're like, oh yeah, Lorraine, and she's doing, this and that. I think also showing that I did public speaking and I was doing events and getting my, name and voice out there also allowed people to realize, oh, Lorraine is open to these sorts of opportunities. Let's invite her to this, or let's invite her to that. And it all kind of builds on each other, right? So as you do more public speaking, you get invited to do podcasts, for example. I've gotten invited to contribute to books, just a lot of really wonderful things that I wouldn't have ever imagined for myself, like becoming a LinkedIn learning instructor, for example. So all these really great things just kind of build on each other. And the more you do one thing and then you post and people see it, it just is really great, just builds on top of each other, and it can really accelerate your career. And, that's the case whether you are working at a company, because I still worked at a company when all these great things happened, or it can also help you if you are not at a company and you're trying to build that awareness and either do something on your own or just build your visibility so you become a more competitive candidate for a future job.
I mean, you're a consultant now, as I understand it, after looking at
Yeah,
your
that's one of
profile,
the
right?
things I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't kind of have a full-time gig anymore. I would imagine a lot of your kind of inbound leads come via LinkedIn, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's an incredible way to build. I think a lot of the freelancers I've spoken to recently, we work with a lot of people, like a lot of amazing freelance writers at Buffer on our guest posts. And so many of them have pitched content about how LinkedIn keeps their business alive and keeps, inbounds flowing in.
Nice.
And a lot of them, I think one of them even said to me, I don't even have to do outbound. It kind of all comes via the content that I'm creating, which is incredible. Great. I would imagine it's the same for you.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome to hear. Yeah. Content, it can do, a lot of wonderful things for someone.
Yeah, exactly. But let's put the shoe on the other foot. So let's go back to what I mentioned about the benefits for the company that you're working at. So, quite apart from building your personal brand, it also helps to build the company's presence on the platform. I think something that I've seen personally with managing company pages on LinkedIn and even other social platforms, it's just engagement is just not what it used to be, 2 or 3 years ago on company pages and like brand accounts. Unless you are like mavens like Duolingo or one of those, crazy social brands that are able to just go wild. Like it's just, it's very difficult to get your voice heard. But as a person, as a personal account, I think engagement is automatically a lot higher. People trust people a lot more than they, trust brands. So yeah, this is a really long run up to a question. I've kind of answered a little bit already, but I'd love to hear your take on what the benefits are for companies who have employees that are active on a platform like LinkedIn or whatever social platform makes the most sense for their industry, right?
Yeah. Well, you touched on it. You get a lot of brand awareness in an organic, very authentic way. So people do trust people more and people connect with people more. So when your employees are posting, people see, oh, okay, they work at this company. What is this company? You learn more about it. I mentioned before, I got invited to a lot of speaking events and people would, obviously, talk about me, but then also talk about the company that I work for. So my company was getting mentioned on promotional images in the event itself. And people, learned, what is Prezi up to these days? And I would use the product too when I would speak. And so it just, all these pieces fit together and people, saw it one way many years ago. And people say, oh, it's the tool I used in college. And then they see it now and they see me talking about it. And they're just like, oh, Prezi is still out there and it's doing its thing. And so it really, I would say, really kind of brought the company back into kind of the forefront of, people's minds and realizing that, okay, it's still here. And maybe we're more interested in learning about it after seeing that I spoke on it and was using it. So it was just a very natural way to promote the company, but also still, promote myself at the same time at these various events.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super, super mutually beneficial. I think when it's done in the right way, right?
Yeah.
So getting onto our anonymous marketer's question, whose boss is just a bit old school and not super happy about anything posted on LinkedIn. What kind of advice would you give someone in this situation who wants to build a personal brand and wants to be active in social?
Yeah, I feel for this person. I would say that the first, maybe the easiest thing that you could do as you're posting on LinkedIn is to have some sort of disclaimer at the bottom of your posts indicating that whatever you talk about are your own opinions, not affiliated with the company at all. Something else I would think about for this person is to explain to their boss, why they are posting on LinkedIn. It sounds like this boss, has a more old school mentality for what should be posted on LinkedIn. And yeah, of course, there's a time and place to post great things and exciting announcements about the company. but really you want to, again, be helpful to people. And by providing that useful content, you're going to grow your audience. You're going to grow visibility for the company. And so I think just explaining your goals to your boss could be another helpful thing. And then the last thing I would think about is possibly, I don't know if this person's company has budget. It sounds like a great company to work for. This person is very happy in their job, but to bring someone in to talk about the benefits of posting on LinkedIn, for example, or getting your personal brand out there. Someone like me. But just to have someone teach and kind of maybe break those misconceptions, I think is another thing to consider, because it sounds like the boss just needs a little bit more education around, the benefits.
Yeah. And I think there are a lot of companies that are really, really leaning into stuff like this. So that what comes to mind is Chili Piper, Lavender is doing amazing stuff on LinkedIn, and all of them have really active employees. Yeah. And I think that is something that companies will look for in the future when they're hiring, especially if it's a more kind of customer facing, public facing role, like in marketing. Yeah, it can be hugely beneficial. We actually worked on an article for Buffett together, Lorraine, about this exact thing. So if people want to go and read it, we'll stick it in the show notes. I think it's all about the benefits of personal branding for employers, of, kind of encouraging and empowering their employees to build professional personal brands. Yeah, we'll stick that in the show notes, and maybe this anonymous marketer can send it to their boss. I don't know. Is that passive aggressive? Maybe. So something I've been thinking about with this question is maybe you could kind of have like an open dialogue about, if the CEO or founder of this company was a little bit more explicit about what they don't like, and maybe it's just a case of, it's so difficult because the idea of someone dictating, my boss dictating to me what to post, just like, ugh. But if there are kind of some no-go zones or, things that we don't want you to talk about, maybe that could be, the compromise, I guess, if this person doesn't want to leave their role and is adamant they want to be active on social. What are your thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Or coming up with some sort of brand guideline or employee guideline for posting. And I think a lot of companies might not have something like that. So maybe this person can spearhead that initiative. I don't know, or maybe, work with HR, or I don't know exactly what it would be, but just coming up with some guidelines, I think is a really good idea. Because right now it sounds like the boss is just kind of, saying no to everything and not really being not really being very clear. So to have those specific guidelines, I think could be a really good idea. And maybe you just take the initiative and come up with, some things that they can look at and get their thoughts. And hopefully that kind of opens the pathway a little bit more for this person to post a little bit more freely.
Yeah. And maybe it's kind of a continuing conversation rather than a kind of, okay, I'm going to do this. Are you going to let me? Maybe it's okay, these are the things I'm thinking about talking about. What are your thoughts? I don't know. Maybe this is giving the manager in question too much power. Maybe this person could work with the company's social media manager. I think social media managers, this is my personal little tangent that I really think that I predict is going to happen, that social media managers will need to kind of work really closely with internal influencers or creators, or, maybe want of a better term, like you were at Prezi, and so many people, like, a bunch of employees are at Lavender and Chili Piper, who we've talked about before. And, they kind of work together to maybe these people that have a big following can kind of, help amplify a product launch, or maybe they can be the ones to announce it. I don't know. I love the potential for synergy between marketers and, internal influencers.
I agree.
Exciting frontier.
Yeah. I spoke to a former marketing executive at Netflix and was asking her about just this idea about, employee advocates and posting on LinkedIn. And she had mentioned she feels like a lot of communications teams could benefit from having that training or helping the comms teams teach their employees exactly what's okay to post, what's not okay to post. I think probably similar to this boss here, a lot of people, when they are kind of very quick to say don't post, it's just out of fear or just not exactly knowing or not having guidelines or not having the structure to teach their employees, because they don't want their employees like going rogue, or maybe that's what it feels like if there's not that kind of structure or guidelines in place.
Yeah. On that note, do you think people will kind of, for example, if I was to post something that didn't I don't know. Okay, I don't want to use myself as an example because it's making me anxious. If I don't like being in trouble. If our anonymous marketer were to post something, that, I don't know, maybe they had a wild time at the company retreat and there were pictures, okay, that's a very intense example. But do you think, okay, that's a bad example because the company is involved. But, if they were to post something a little bit suspect that doesn't kind of align with the company values, do you think someone in their audience would see that person and immediately be like, ooh, this company that they work for is clearly not a vibe? Do you think it would reflect badly on the company?
Yeah, I think it's possible. And that's why it's tough. I mean, I think you want to obviously be able to post what you want to post that represents you, but at the same time, you are still representing the company. And that's why, like, if you're building your personal brand, yes, it helps you, but it also, it needs to help the company as well, or at least shed a positive light on the company. You don't want to be posting controversial or negative things that could reflect poorly on the company. So in that case, you still need to, be careful and take that into consideration. So it's a fine line. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. So this boss is not like crazy for, being anxious about this whole situation. But I think it feels like a very unlikely scenario because, people know that, as you mentioned at the beginning of our show, your LinkedIn profile, you can only have one. It's connected to your name. It's connected to your career. It's not some random burner Instagram account. That you can kind of keep hidden away from your company. And I mean, to be clear, this marketer who have asked the question doesn't seem to be doing anything like this at all. I think the examples would probably be more, layoffs are happening in the industry and maybe the company is thinking about layoffs. It's a fine line.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like this company is not even thinking about them. It just sounds like they don't want the implication that if the employee is posting about layoffs, that the other employees could get freaked out and think it applies to the company. So it's hard. Yeah.
I didn't make that connection. That's probably exactly why their bosses are a bit worried about it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add or anything you would like to share with this person? If you could give them a piece of advice.
I would just say I'm happy this person is getting out there and posting on LinkedIn and pushing back a little bit. And I hope that, they can come to some sort of agreement with their boss, with their company. It sounds like it's more of an issue with the boss. So I think you just opening up the lines of communication a little bit more, being a little bit more transparent, maybe showing a content calendar ahead of time. Just maybe even that, just so that they can see and feel like there's a sense of control. Like, okay, I know the boss will know what's coming up versus feeling maybe surprised every day, seeing different posts. Like that could be something helpful as well. So I hope this employee keeps at it and hopefully they can find a solution to work that works with their boss as well.
I love the idea of a content calendar. And it's also like a really cool forcing function for you to kind of have your posts prepared ahead of time, maybe do some batch scheduling, something like that. I think maybe just fear of the unknown will help alleviate a bit of the stress for our anonymous boss. Lorraine, I would be remiss if I did not ask you. I think a lot of people listening to the show might not have this particular problem. They might just be interested in building their own brands on LinkedIn. So I would love it if you could kind of give us a high-level starter kit guide. What do folks need to do if they want to become you?
Oh gosh. I would say the first thing is to really focus on your profile. So I like to say that the profile is really that foundational piece. And then afterwards you can build the content and post more regularly, but really focus on the profile first. So that means having, a really nice profile picture, just like very basic. Having a background cover photo that represents you and isn't just the default, LinkedIn kind of animation banner, which a lot of people still have. And making sure that your headline that you're using or taking advantage of all 220 characters and filling it out with keywords and having your, unique value prop or mission statement there. Making sure that creator mode is turned on and that your featured and activity sections are featured more prominently, and making sure you have things in the featured section, making sure your experience is filled out. So all that good stuff, I think, is a really important place to start, but really, making sure that top 1/3 of your profile is complete.
Yes.
That's the first thing people see. You really want to stick that and make sure that that is really strong.
such an easy win, that as well. I think people kind of think are like completely intimidated by the idea of, building a personal brand. I mean, they have to post every day. Doesn't necessarily mean that. I think I probably post maybe twice a week these days. If I'm like,
it does not need to be every day. And I know LinkedIn, they give the advice to post 4 times a week for consistency. I think that's way too ambitious. I think, especially for someone who's never posted before, that's a lot. So I like to say, just keep the bar really low. So even posting once a month, achieve that, you'll realize very doable. Maybe you post twice a month and then you've already exceeded your goals and you can feel good about that. And then slowly over time, you just figure out, it's about consistency. It doesn't need to be 4 times a week. So just figure out what works best for you and stick to that schedule.
I love that. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add for the purpose of this discussion? I always kind of finish off with an open-ended question that really puts my guests on the spot, actually, now that I think about it. Just in terms of kind of building your professional brand, employee advocacy.
I would say I just hope that people take away that it is really important to have an online presence. In this day and age, so much of that first impression, or really our only impression, can be virtual unless we end up, being lucky and being able to meet in person. But just making sure that you have your online presence ready to go. And of course, a big piece of that is LinkedIn. I like to call it your online landing page. So I just hope that everyone who maybe is hesitant or a little bit nervous just takes that leap. Again, just start with the profile and then build from there. And just know that, no one is judging you. And we're all learning, right? So just take it step by step, and you'll be able to build that slowly but surely.
Yeah. And don't overthink it. Your friends from high school are not looking at your content. You don't have to worry about what they're going to say about you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And if anything, if they're looking, they're probably like, wow, like that person's killing it.
Exactly. Lorraine, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me today. Your guidance here is invaluable. I'm sure it's not going to be the last time that I would ask you to be on the show, because we've got so many questions. I think so many marketers are fascinated by this field. So I would love to tap into your expertise again. If anyone has questions to submit to the show, again, it is marketersindemand.com/anonymous. Even if you would like to ask Lorraine a question, who knows? Maybe we will have her on the show again, especially for you. But thanks so much, Lorraine.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Thanks for checking out this episode of The Anonymous Marketer. This show is part of Marketers in Demand, a network of podcasts featuring the world's leading B2B marketers. Unlock your full potential as a B2B marketer by going to marketersindemand.com.